belong to Glasgow, that's how the old song ran. Ask anyone who's been there, you will understand. You can take the man from Glasgow, but not the Glasgow from the man.
Well, hello and welcome to all our listeners in the UK and across the world. Welcome to Weirder Hings podcast with myself, Innes Smith, and Michael McCann.
Hello.
Hello there. You can find us and listen to us on Paranormal UK radio website. That's paukradio.com. You can also find us on Facebook. We are the Weirder Hings podcast. Hings, just to translate, what does Hings mean, Michael, in English?
It means things.
Things, there you go. So that's a wee translation there for you. You can also find us on Twitter at Weirder Podcast, and on email, just to give you something to think about, we are Weirder Things, not Hings, Things. Weirder Things Podcast, all one word, lowercase, at gmail.com. So if you want to get in touch, want to ask us any questions, want us to cover a particular topic, want to, even abuse, we're up for abuse.
Oh, I love it. I live for abuse.
That's it. We are Scottish. We love to receive and dole out good abuse, bit abuse. We love it.
We can take it.
We take it. We just it's like oxygen in it.
Yeah.
We thrive in it. So that's Weirder Things podcast. Weirder Things, not Hings. Weirder Things podcast at gmail.com. Drop us an email. We'd be most grateful for that. Well,
I need to promise that at some point I will change to a normal podcast address.
Don't change.
No, just keep it
It's
confusing.
It's called Weirder Hings.
Yeah.
So let's just be weird.
Okay.
Even about Hings.
I'm sure no one is going to have any problems with
No
that,
one's going to have any problems. Okay, so what is today's topic? It is
haunted Glasgow.
Oh, haunted Glasgow.
A favourite subject of mine.
Well, there you go. So, if you don't know, if you are not native to these isles, you will probably have heard of a few of Scotland's cities. Edinburgh is our capital city, but Glasgow is our largest city.
It is.
It's
also one of our oldest.
It is indeed. Well, do you know what? I think, Michael, what you should do is you should answer this important question. Is Glasgow haunted? Let's go to Glasgow Cathedral and find out.
Anyway, so I thought here would be a good place to start because this is where Glasgow started. Glasgow was founded in the 6th century by a guy called St Mungo. A guy for Fife.
A guy for
Fife.
Fife. Did he rock up?
He rocked up for Fife and decided that this would be a good place to build a cathedral or a wee church. So he did that. So Glasgow is about 400 years older than Edinburgh. Right, so a lot of people,
Edinburgh.
Yeah, a lot of people think that Edinburgh is because it's really old. That it's probably really super haunted, which it is. But when they come to Glasgow, they see Glasgow's quite a modern city and think, it's probably not as old and as haunted as Edinburgh. But this podcast is here to educate and tell people that it's actually older and probably more haunted than Edinburgh. Ooh. So I thought this would be a good place to start because here we have the cathedral where we're standing. Behind the cathedral we have the necropolis, which means city of the dead. Ooh.
Yeah.
To our, I don't know where we're standing, to our left is the Royal Infirmary.
Picture it in your minds, listeners.
If you Google this, if you Google Glasgow Cathedral, where me and Innes are standing, we're standing at the front doors in the cathedral. To our left, you've got the Royal Infirmary Hospital.
Yeah.
Super haunted by a grey lady. It's got its own grey lady. It's got nurses, doctors, nuns, you name it. You've also got an old guy who wanders around visiting people, and when they say to the nurse, "Who was that?" they're like, "There's nobody here." So we've got a wee ghost that likes to visit sick and dying people, and it's said that when he visits them, they usually pop their clogs within a couple of days.
And due to the sort of perennial underfunding of the NHS, I'm sure people would be quite happy to see anybody in the world. You know what I mean?
Across the road from that, and we're going to go there, is Provin's Lordship, which is the oldest house in Glasgow, opened in 1464, 67. Can't remember dates on the wall when we go over. And we're going to go in there and we're going to tell some ghost stories.
Ooh, that's exciting,
right.
yeah.
So we'll go and do that.
Yeah, we're going to go for a wee walk. Yeah, if people are wondering why everyone thinks Edinburgh is older, it's really just because Edinburgh doesn't routinely demolish its history. Glasgow has an extreme enthusiasm for destroying the past and constantly reinventing itself. So there are virtually we're essentially walking to the one thing that might be termed a sort of late medieval Renaissance building. It's pretty much just one of them left. Yeah. Well, two, counting the cathedral. There are very few Georgian buildings, but basically most buildings in Glasgow, the Victorians, Glasgow was a very wealthy Victorian city, and they pretty much just trashed everything before it and went in a building crazy. So yeah, we're both history buffs. Michael used to do tours here, basically, so that's why there's such a professional gloss.
Yes, I have dates and names, etc.
Oh, it's amazing. I'm enjoying it. But yeah, both history buffs. Just another thing is basically, and the birth of modern anaesthetics actually happened in the Royal Infirmary here. Yeah,
it's the white coat doctors was actually introduced there.
That's true. All of the above. We could bang on about this, but let's just shut up.
Joseph Lister,
an Englishman, but he was a professor of surgery at Glasgow. Yes. Yeah. So anyway, it's a bit noisy. We'll shut up and
we'll go inside. Yeah. Get warm. Right. So we're inside Provin's Lordship, right?
Oh, I like that whispering.
Yeah, I like the whispering that gives it something. So in here, there's a door, right? We'll take a picture of it and we'll put it up somewhere.
Okay, so we're on the ground floor of the building. We're looking at a wooden door, and it says it's got a mystic sign on it. What does it say?
It says staff only.
Oh, what does that mean?
Now I know what's behind this door.
Is that for wizards, just to keep staffs in there, but only staff?
In a way, but instead of staffs, it's mops.
Oh, right, okay.
It's a cleaner's cupboard.
Ah, okay.
Right. So what basically happened is one morning there was some cleaners in here in the building cleaning. Right. And she was in this cupboard.
Well, it's good you mentioned that, because that is quite rare for cleaners to clean.
Yeah. She was in the cupboard doing her thing, and if you look above us, you'll see old 14th century wooden floors.
Oh.
And if you step on them, they make a ton of noise. Now she's in the building on her own, and she hears footsteps upstairs. So she goes on the radio and says, "Is there anybody over here?" Who means, "No, the building's empty." And so she got out of here pretty sharpish,
right,
because there was footsteps upstairs where we're going to go out next, because this story continues upstairs.
Oh, let's go upstairs.
In this room in here,
I can feel it's quite spooky in here.
Can you feel that?
It's got a bit of a vibe here, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. I don't mean it to come across all mystic,
yeah.
inverted.
Because you're not that.
Well, no, I'm not. I don't go for it. I just can tell if somewhere's spooky.
Right, okay.
There you go.
Yeah, it's really old in here, obviously. So in here, a lot of people do come in here and sense things, which is interesting that you said that.
Yeah, but obviously you just told me. If you
no,
want
right,
to
okay,
make an experiment,
yeah,
you should have said, guess which room, and then
right,
I went
okay.
back,
Right, okay. Or am I leading up the garden path with that one? We've heard there's been noises and stuff like that in this room, but this isn't the most haunted room. I won't tell you which one it is.
Okay. Yeah.
And we'll see if you can pick it up.
Right, okay, that's a good one, yeah.
Right, okay, so we'll just go wander around, right?
Wander around.
Where's it coming from? I find that quite peaceful though. I find this quite a peaceful room. Anything?
Yeah, I'm still feeling a slight zap of spookiness. There's a wee atmosphere in here. Yeah. This feels a bit cold right here.
Yeah, you're getting a wee cold spot there.
Obviously because it's maybe just
Cold outside.
Yeah.
I think it's somewhere in the region of -2 outside.
But yeah, you have these lovely seats here, quite spooky.
Assuming that's what these were for, people would maybe sit by the window.
Yes, that's right. The sort of Inglenook kind of seats, just because this is basically the lightest place. So if you wanted to read or do anything that required light, you would have to sit right next to the window, considering how small they were and how much lead you would have in the glass. Yeah, so this downstairs and this is nearer the windows, still feels slightly spookier, but also it's interesting.
So what do you think about this room?
Yeah, well, I think this is quite. It feels kind of somewhat chilling, especially around about here.
Yeah, this room?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because here's why, and this is where I'm going to tell you my next ghost story.
Yeah.
If you look at the window here,
Yes.
see right across the road there?
I do.
The buildings are actually staffed by people in the building across the road.
Okay,
And
so
the
yes.
building was closing about 5ish o'clock at night. And this building closed, and a staff member that I know personally was standing at the front doors across the road, and he looked over here, and at this window where we're standing, he saw somebody standing at the window.
Right.
So he went, "Oh, I've locked somebody in the building, somebody still in the building." So they went, "Oh," so they had to go and get the keys. They came over, done a search of the building. There was nobody here. At this very window that we're standing at. So there's been a ghost spotted standing
Well,
at this window.
that makes a pleasing change, because one of the interesting things I think about apparitions is you would expect, if apparitions are basically some sort of recording of a past life, you'd expect to see people more doing the things they did when they were alive. And so people in this building would have spent an awful lot of time next to the windows.
Yeah,
Because
like you
that's-
just said downstairs.
Yeah, exactly. So that kind of makes sense. But it does actually seem to be the case that a lot of people experience odd things and see odd things actually in corridors and stairwells and doorways and those sorts of things.
Well, there's light. That's pretty interesting that you went, "Oh, this room's got a wee spooky feel to it."
I think it's more towards the windows, I think. But it's a beautiful building. So, by the magic of podcast radio, we are now back in the studio.
Yeah, nice and warm.
Nice and warm. And, so that was Province Lordship, one of Glasgow's... it's not one of, it is Glasgow's oldest building, isn't it?
It's the last remaining, or one of the last remaining. It says the oldest building, but there's a place called Province Mill House or something that people get the two of them mixed up, because that one's also very old. So a lot of people get them confused. One of the things I didn't talk about, though, in that report, we'll call it a report.
A report, yeah.
Yeah, was in that vicinity as well is a place called Cathedral House Hotel, which is also said to be one of the most haunted buildings in Glasgow.
Yep.
It was built in 1877 and was a rehabilitation centre for women who had, or female prisoners from the nearby Duke Street prison.
There you go. It's quite a lovely building to rehabilitate these ladies.
Yes, we're very good to our prisoners.
Just looking at the building makes my feminine side just a bit better behaved, you know?
Yeah. Just down the road from it was Duke Street Prison, which was actually a mixed prison.
Oh, yeah.
And it's also where Glasgow, for a while, used to hang people for their crimes. And at 9 o'clock in the morning, no, was it 9? 8? I think it was 8 a.m. in the morning, they'd raise a black flag and ring the bell. The bell that they used to ring is actually still in the People's Palace Museum. So if you go along to the People's Palace Museum, they actually have the bell from Duke Street Prison in there, and they've got a list of all the names of the people who were hanged.
Or well done, I say. Yeah.
Let me just go executed.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this building, it's a hotel now. and it is said to be one of the most haunted buildings in Glasgow.
Do naughty ladies still go there?
Actually, it's strangely phantom children that are heard regularly running around the top floor of the building.
Or maybe
And
just
on
young
the stair-
ladies.
On the maybe on
Light
the
of
stairwells.
foot. All right,
Yeah.
okay, that's good. So
Um,
were there any children kept in there?
Possibly, maybe when women were being released from prison, they maybe gave birth in prison, and they were maybe reunited when they got.
Just-
I don't know.
Just
I don't
through the
know.
wains up
Yeah.
into the attic.
Yeah. They
Run
maybe,
around,
I don't
kids.
know. So they need to have somewhere to stay.
But that's interesting.
So,
You've got that history, but you've got the kids running around. Yeah.
It's there's usually lots of light anomalies, chairs moving, and voices in this building. So it's said to be, and it's a very popular location for paranormal investigators to visit and do investigations and stuff
just
like
to
that.
investigate.
It's just one of the places in that area that I realised
Yeah.
that I actually forgot to speak about when we were outside in the freezing cold.
And the
I
fact,
think it was the cold that made me forget.
and the fact it's still a hotel, yeah.
It closed recently for refurb, and it is, I believe, opening up again as a hotel. So you can book a room there. If you want to come to visit Glasgow and spend the night in a haunted hotel, it's the cathedral. Well, it was the Cathedral House Hotel. I don't know what its new name is, but yeah.
It's on. Is the address Cathedral Square? Is that
Castle Street.
Castle Street? Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
So you can go there. So, do you have any other haunted spots in Glasgow?
I have many haunted spots. in
Let's hear
Glasgow.
them. Let's hear all about them.
Well, okay, so in my experience of investigating the paranormal as part of the Scottish Society for Psychical Research, and that's how you have to say it like that, we get calls to the public distressed by whatever is happening in them, so where they are. So there are often private residences, so I have to be vague about geographical locations. In terms of public buildings that we know about, I just make this as a casual observation, but at one point we were asked to investigate a pub, so open to the public. And initially, the investigators were asked to really, really keep this under your hat. Don't tell anyone. We don't want to freak out any of the customers. But lo and behold, now the pub advertises itself as being haunted, because obviously bums on seats is a way to make money. After most haunted, all those sort of paranormal running around with video cameras programs started happening on television, they realised there was an enormous market and interest for people to go. So it's the Auctioneer's Pub, basically, the Auctioneer's Pub in Glasgow, and apparently a ghost of a young girl is meant to be seen in the basement. Why there would be young girls hanging around the basement of this building, I have no idea, but some people have seen this apparition in the basement. Theatres, notoriously haunted. I know you mentioned there when we were on location. Hospitals of course, but theatres, the Citizens Theatres got a reputation for being haunted, but many theatres do. You see, that's the thing about actors, they never can leave the stage. They're always hanging about. But in terms of locations, general locations, it does seem to be certain areas of the west end of Glasgow, certain parts of obviously the city centre, the oldest parts of the city centre, which we may be visiting shortly, and but also the south side of Glasgow, especially. Funnily enough, there's a part of Glasgow that you might think would be haunted. It's a neighbourhood called Battlefield.
Ah.
So there you go. So it's named Battlefield after the Battle of Langside.
Is it a phantom battle?
No, it's not a phantom battle, but it just seems to be a part of Glasgow that I come across quite a few people talking about their experiences there. There's also the River Cart. The White Cart winds its way through the south side, and there's actually a path. And some people have had some odd experiences on this path. A phantom cyclist. So a lady that is sporting clothing dating from the 1940s is apparently seen going for a wee pedal alongside the River Cart. So that's quite interesting. So who knows? I heard quite a few stories. There was one interesting story about there's apparently a Victorian villa in one of the more well-heeled areas in the south side of Glasgow. There's quite a few. Take your pick. I'm not giving it the neighbourhood away, but somebody bought a house and sold it within 3 weeks because they couldn't live there. It was apparently so appalling. I always think that those people, just a wee top tip out there, if you ever do find yourself in possession of a property that's so incredibly haunted you can't bear to live there, don't sell it. Just keep it on and charge an admission fee, because the amount of people that would pay good money to go and visit there. But yeah, Glasgow does have a reputation. Certain parts of Glasgow. I just think it's quite interesting that there is this correlation, this belief that the older somewhere is, that the more history it has, the more memories might be buried in the stones, and therefore you would assume that the older a part of Glasgow is, the more hauntings it has. But often lots of modern housing schemes can have stories attached, and we have Glasgow, because you may not know, kids, but in the 1950s Glasgow was the most densely populated city in Europe. So we had lots of really densely packed parts of Glasgow, essentially slums. So and lots of families all living in one room essentially. So those neighbourhoods were pretty much demolished, and new towns, new sort of satellite towns and neighbourhoods were built in the 1960s and the 1970s. And there are certain towns, etc., on the outskirts of Glasgow that have lots of odd cases attached to interesting hauntings, such as East Kilbride. Did you know East Kilbride is a weird place?
I did actually. I've heard a few stories about
and Cumbernauld
properties in East Kilbride and
East Kilbride, Cumbernauld, yeah.
Castlemilk as well is another one that I like to kind of raise. I have some knowledge and experience. Well, I don't have any experiences, but I know people who have had experiences in Castlemilk.
My favourite thing is like strange entities and lights have been seen up around East Kilbride, which I quite like.
In properties?
No, just not in properties, but outside. Just this sort of East Kilbride is surrounded by. It's a new town, modern town. You can check up on the internet, but it's surrounded by quite a lot of fields and sort of moorland sort of thing.
Greenbelt,
Greenbelt, yes. And so lots of people have seen odd things up there. Yeah, walking dogs out for a stroll, seeing weird stuff, and at night as well, seeing things like searchlights that you would assume are attached to helicopters, but they're not.
Ooh, I remember I used to live not a million miles away from East Kilbride, and one night there was some. This was the 80s. Giving away my age.
A lot of things happened in the 80s.
Yeah, there was some hysteria at these lights in the sky over Cathkin Braes, over like kind of the East Kilbride Cathkin Braes area.
Yeah, that's the south side.
And I
of
saw them,
Glasgow,
big searchlights up in the sky, and were like doing things and like making circles and all this kind of stuff. People like, what the hell is that? People freaking out a wee bit. Turns out they were opening the new ice rink, and it was it was just big fancy lights in the sky they were beaming the lights in the sky to celebrate the opening of the ice rink, and it was just that.
So
a much more innocent time.
Yeah, so basically what could have started off as a publicity drive to publicise the opening of a new ice rink could have ended in some kind of apocalyptic panic.
Just people crashing their cars and
that's it. Ram raiding.
There was literally, I remember people literally running down the street. There was honestly, I saw people, like, I've got a vague memory of people just like running down the street and pointing at these lights in the sky, like, is that?
So what I would like to do is just tell you a wee detail from an interesting case that did happen in the south side of Glasgow. I won't name the neighbourhood, but it is one of the neighbourhoods I have mentioned earlier on. We like to keep it vague.
As a battlefield.
Oh, Michael, don't give it away. Anyway, so all the names have been anonymised. Okay, just to reassure people that names have been changed to protect the innocent. So basically this is going back about 20 years ago. I'm keeping it vague. So I'm going to read this out. This is from a report from the SSPR. So this is basically on the evening before Hogmanay. So think festive. Think people are probably still at the turkey curry. On the evening before Hogmanay, Mrs. McGraw was in her flat when both Mrs. Graham and Peter Jones, her neighbour from upstairs, so this is a tenement flat, this is a close, so you have people, you have probably about eight different apartments in the one with the one main door address. So if our American cousins can picture this, and what's amusing is basically Mrs. Graham forced her, the client, the person that's telling the story, to borrow her Dyson. Now, a Dyson is a powerful vacuum cleaner. So she thought this was extremely unusual and didn't want to borrow her neighbour's vacuum cleaner, but wasn't allowed to refuse.
Wait. So she's in the house.
Aye.
There's that at the door.
Yep.
It's her neighbour who's like,
You've got
to borrow this.
Yep.
And she's like, no, thank you. And she's like, no.
She didn't. You know what? The thing is just to paint an absolutely accurate scene. She didn't actually have the Dyson vacuum cleaner with her. She knocked on the door and said, "I have this. You have got to borrow this." Now,
is it you've got to see how amazing this Hoover is at picking up dirt?
See, initially I was probably just as confused as the person telling this story, but as was commented upon, when these vacuum cleaners first were invented and in circulation, they were so much more powerful than the normal conventional ones that people would probably knock on complete strangers' doors and say, check this out, by the way. This is amazing.
Right, so this is not what this was.
We are not being sponsored by Dyson, by the way. I have to make this clear. If Dyson want to sponsor us, but get in touch. But Dyson features in the beginning, in the middle of a supernatural horror story. So there you go. You got to see. I've got this new Dyson. You got to borrow it. I'm not really that interested.
I've got laminate flooring. I don't need it.
Yeah, you've got to. So
it's fine.
She was not allowed to refuse like this. You can't say no, right? So Mrs. McGraw, this is indeed the anonymised name of the client, went downstairs with Mr. Jones, the neighbour upstairs, and both of them waited in the kitchen while Mrs. Graham, in the basement, fetched the vacuum cleaner from her living room. From the kitchen, they could see across the hall into Mrs. Graham's bedroom, and something caught Mrs. McGraw's eye. There were 2 or 3 red baubles, like Christmas tree baubles, falling off from the top of the wardrobe and bouncing on the floor. When her neighbour arrived with the Dyson, she told her about it, to which Mrs. Graham replied, "I don't keep baubles up there." See, it's chilling, innit? This gets seriously more disturbing. So just hold that thought. Then, according to Mrs. McGraw, all hell broke loose. Okay, so you think Christmas decorations bouncing from the top of wardrobes is lightweight, but anyway, all hell broke loose. There was all this stuff flying, all this noise crashing, but no apparent damage. So lots of things start to fly out. As soon as they clock that something's weird, then everything starts to kick off. The guy goes, "What was that?" Mrs. McGraw went on to elaborate. Stones appeared, which shouldn't have been there. Chuckies, that's what we call in Scotland, small stones, used in sort of paths and driveways, and debris. So basically lots of stuff, even stuff from outside, started to get flung around the flat, right? And basically the woman whose flat it was, Catherine Graham, said, "I'm not staying here." She probably used a few words in there. "I'm not staying here," and left the flat, leaving her flat door open, just legged it, right? Leaving them at what was meant to be a Hoover demonstration, right? Standing there. So they all went upstairs, back to the client's flat, Mrs. McGraw's flat, to put the kettle on and to phone for a taxi. When phoning, all three heard a loud crash from the living room.
Right, who's getting the taxi?
They're all they're all getting a taxi. God knows, they're probably just legging it. They're thinking, we're not staying in this close anymore.
Right, so they're
Right.
vacating the entire.
I think that's the plan. Yeah.
Right.
So they're like, right, get out of the basement because there's a poltergeist throwing all sorts of stuff down
Right.
there.
Okay.
They go upstairs to her flat. She lived above. And phone for a taxi. When phoning, all three heard a loud crash from the living room. So this is from her living room upstairs. And investigating, found just a single 20p piece on the coffee table. When the taxi arrived, Catherine Graham, lady from downstairs, ran down the stairs towards the front door, only pausing to shut the front door of her own property. Right, she was just like legging out, shut the door. Right,
But security first.
watching her exit from the upstairs landing was both Mrs. McGraw, the client, and Mr. Jones, him from upstairs. They watched Mrs. Graham shut the door, and immediately after, I saw a white blur and heard a loud crash against the front door. The white blur came from behind us, from between our heads, and crashed into the door, but there was no damage. So basically, the weird thing is I saw a blur, heard a crash against the front door, and then the white blur came from behind us. So this weird thing seemed to exit the flat and fly between their heads and crashed into the door, but there was no damage.
Was it the close door or the house door?
I think this was the front door.
Right.
To the
To the close or to the house?
to the close, I think. Aye.
Right. Okay, that would make sense.
Aye. From
So
that
it's
door.
almost like there's something. This white blur was chasing the neighbour.
Aye.
Right. Okay.
Aye. It's totally weird. I just quite like that wee story of, and the interesting thing about that story as well is you can never guarantee how much your client or your witness to a paranormal event has prior knowledge of the paranormal. Mm-hmm. They might be a huge fan of the supernatural. They might know a lot about poltergeist cases. But when somebody tells you something which is quite typical of a poltergeist case, then you go, "Oh, that's quite interesting." But poltergeists are infamous for throwing stones. And go back to the beginning of records when people started to notice these things, and that's one of their main things.
Yeah, I can absolutely concur on that, because I have had a stone thrown at me by a poltergeist.
Yay! There you go. So as it happens. So I just thought I'd just fire that wee one. I've got plenty of other nice yarns about paranormal cases in Glasgow. Do you want to hear some more?
Yes, please. I really enjoyed that one.
Did you enjoy that one?
I enjoyed that one. So if I enjoyed that, hopefully our listeners also enjoyed it.
Okay, right. Here's another
Because
one.
these are real cases from Glasgow that
Real
these
cases.
these aren't. You can't read these in books and stuff like that. These
Can't read
are
these.
these are
These-
from the
these are from the-
files of the SSPR.
The archives of the Scottish Society for Psychical Research.
This is fascinating stuff.
So there you go. So that was a poltergeist case, and that poltergeist case, basically the client moved. Okay, so here's another account. So this is a lady. And this was a very interesting case. This was a young lady that was talking about experiences in her own flat, but also previous experiences in other addresses in which she lived. Her mother also experienced, was a witness to some of these events, but also had previous experiences of odd things in her life as well. And this is actually the mother's account of an apparition that she saw in Govan when she was younger. So here you go. So this is the other report was basically me paraphrasing an interview, whereas this is actually a transcript of an interview. So this is the exact words. So of the client. So and I found this so fascinating that I made sure that I got as much detail as possible because I thought it was very interesting. The woman that reared me up, or brought up. Okay, so the woman that reared me up, it was her daughter. It was Sally Dundas. Need I say that this is all anonymised as well, okay? This is anonymised. I had a wee lamp on. I was in my bed 5 minutes, if it was 5 minutes. I was in my bed propped up on the pillows. Next minute she came from in the door, walked right up. She actually, walking or floating, whatever they do, she came right up to me, and I'll tell you, I got a fright. But she was saying something about Mary. I remember her saying Mary, but I got so afraid I threw the covers over myself and said, "What you want? What you want?" And when I took the covers down, she was away, and I never saw her since. That woman came up to me just as if I'm looking at you just now, very, very clear. So then I asked her to kind of clarify, to provide me more detail, because I thought that was fascinating. Their faces are funny. Funny. It's queer looking. As plain as can be, that woman walked up to me, came right up to me. I don't know if they float, but you know, the look on their face, it's when you know they're dead. Just the look of them. I don't know. I can't even describe the look in the face. Horrible. I wouldn't say nasty. More like sad than nasty. The face just didn't look right. When she died, she was a real enormous woman, but she didn't look the size when she came. By the face, I knew it was her. The door was open a bit, and it was as if she came through the door and came right up to me. It was unbelievable. It was more like a kind of greyish. It was as if she was not like in a cloud, but what could you say? God, I can still see her. It was as if she was in something, with something around her. It was like she was in a kind of cloud, but it wasn't a cloud. It was as if she was still alive with the actual body, but it was the colour of the face, the look of the face. You know that they're dead. If you didn't know her, you know it was somebody that wasn't alive. It was frightening. There's just something about them that you know they're not alive. It was quick. She was there like that and away like that. And as soon as she walked through the door, I knew who it was, and I knew she'd been dead for years. So I just loved that description, so I kept pushing to get as much detail as I could. So I could bang on and on about these sort of things, but I think we maybe have other places to be.
Yeah, I think. What about we go back to an outside report?
Okay, so we're now going to go to what is now a theatre, but it's been there for a while, and it is the Tron. Take it away, Michael.
Right, so we're now at the Tron Theatre in Glasgow's Argyle Street.
The Tron Gate.
Oh, the Tron Gate. Yeah. This building is ancient. It used to be a church. Well, the land was a church, and the Tron was in front of us, and this part where we're standing was a church. We had a graveyard accompanying it, but at some point during the 17th century, I can't remember the exact date, the Glasgow Hellfire Club was trying to raise the devil, and it accidentally burnt the whole thing down, and the church got knocked down, so they had to rebuild it.
Accidentally.
I'm
sure they'd be quite happy with that result.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's been many things. It's been a police station. It was Glasgow's first ever police station. It was a prison where they imprisoned people who were awaiting hanging and stuff like that. Some famous names have spent the night here waiting to get hanged, including a guy called Matthew Clydesdale, who was the guy who inspired the Mary Shelley's Frankenstein story. So all of that stuff. The building is reportedly super haunted. There's the bar area is haunted by someone.
There's an easy joke in there, isn't there?
Yeah.
The bar's haunted by many drunks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Not spirits.
Not spirit.
Those doors are often seen opening and closing on their own. The boiler room is apparently got a nice wee ghost who inhabits service that area, who goes by the name of George.
Hi, George.
Hi, George. I've met George. I may actually play the recording of George on this.
Do you want to drop that into
haunted.
the show?
Yeah, I'll actually drop that.
Now, right.
Right, so here's my recording.
Just a wee preamble.
Yeah.
So basically, you were staying here overnight in a vigil. You were asking questions. You were leaving a gap, and amazingly, to your surprise,
Yeah.
you actually got somebody's voice that you can guarantee
I could pretty much guarantee
that it was no living person near you,
Yeah, no. This person, this was a disembodied voice.
and you can hear it.
No.
Was it you that threw the stone?
Wow, that was amazing.
Right?
Yeah,
Right,
amazing.
So this is the Trinity House, one of Glasgow's oldest buildings, and super haunted.
Shall we go and have a look at the Glasgow Panopticon?
Yeah.
So we've just walked basically about 100 yards away from the old Tron Kirk, which is now the Tron Theatre. We are still off Trongate, and it's a lovely old Victorian building called the Glasgow Panopticon. It's basically the sort of oldest surviving Victorian music hall. Apart from being a surviving sort of Victorian and Edwardian music hall, it's probably famous for being the place where Stan Laurel debuted back in 1906. His elder brother was actually the manager here and said, right Stan, give it a shot. But the reason why we're talking about it is because it has a reputation for being haunted. A lot of people, staff members and also now visitors, because it is open to the public, say they experience odd things in there. The most commonly reported is actually within the sort of the seats, the stalls, is that somebody talk about a ghost of a soldier in a red coat. So there's apparently haunted by the ghost of a soldier. Such were these yarns about it being haunted that the Scottish Society for Psychical Research decided to investigate this back in 2004. And our investigation actually was featured in a documentary called Psychic Detectives. Now, so we did a stakeout in the building, and we came up with some interesting results. I'm going to read you an extract from one of our investigators of what they experienced, and here goes. So this investigator is talking about a location in the basement. It says, strange hissing on my left. It's like someone's heavy breath on my left, sleeping. I'm seeing movement to my left, shivers down my spine. And the person goes on, say, could this noise be the pipes? Don't like this room, keep on seeing movement, have stomach cramp. Movement again at left hand side. The person goes on. Anyway, to cut a long story short, it was the pipes. Although other people did come across something interesting, we structure our investigations so we have people in particular places at particular times, like shifts, try and not cross-contaminate people's experiences. But at one point in the investigation, there was almost like a break, and it was like freestyle. Just go where you want and do what you want, but as long as you record your experiences. So a small number of people got together and they conducted a seance, what you'd call a sitting, a circle, something like that. And one of those persons, who was not a spiritualist but decided to tag along, and they recorded a drop in 20 degrees centigrade. That is quite a big drop. Why I mention that is not only was that obviously corroborated by a digital thermometer, but it's something that other investigators have spotted. A temperature drop of specifically 20 degrees.
In the basement?
Not in the basement, just generally.
Or just generally in the building?
No, not in the building. Any haunted location, they say that when they have recorded temperature drops on digital thermometers, it has been 20 degrees centigrade. Now, the fact that this is a pattern, it seems to be something specific, and I just think that's worth mentioning. So if there are any physicists out there that can perhaps work out why, if there is a drop of 20 degrees, why would be something specific. Interesting indeed. So yeah, it's a beautiful building. It was restored about 10 years ago, and it's now the the auditorium, the theatrical part of the building, which is still occasionally open to the public, is managed by a trust, the Friends of the Glasgow Panopticon Trust, and they basically, if anyone out there has a spare £9 million, it could probably be restored to its former glory.
9 million?
A snip.
I'll check my bank account when I get home.
Okay, well, it's very, very noisy. We are pretty much in the centre of Glasgow, and as you can hear, there's a lot of works around. Yeah. So, where are we off to now? Back to the Batcave?
Back to the Batcave.
Okay, so, well, are you glad to be back inside again?
I'm so glad to be inside beside the fire.
That's right.
It's nice and cosy.
That's right. So yeah, what I just a sort of a wee footnote, a wee caveat. When I did that investigation of the Panopticon, and then that featured in a BBC documentary, a member of the public got in touch and basically said, my dad, when he was young, used to work there. So a man called Harry Hill in Easterhouse, not the Harry Hill, but a Harry Hill. Harry Hill's a comedian, by the way.
If you're not familiar.
If you're not familiar.
Yeah.
So Harry Hill, and he was a fascinating gentleman. He was in his 90s. Presumably he is past now, but he could be in his 100. He could be 100 now.
Yeah.
Could be over 100.
Could be.
But he was in his 90s, and basically he used to work when the Panopticon was still a working, vibrant music hall, and he even remembers when the so-called, as they were called back in the day, the freaks used to come into town and do their freak show, and he remembers putting them up. He remembers freaks staying in the wee bed in the kitchen, you know.
Nice.
So yeah. So he said things, yeah. So he just sort of corrected certain points. There's a belief that the freaks lived or slept overnight in the Panopticon building. They didn't. When I asked him if there were any stories about hauntings or any, you know, obviously he was working there in the 20s and 30s and 40s. I think it was the 20s and 30s he was there. Yeah. He didn't have any stories. He didn't think there was anything attached to the Panopticon itself. But what he did say, I thought was quite interesting, is back in 1906, back when Stan Laurel did make his debut, the actual music hall was bought over by an entrepreneur called Picard, and he owned quite a lot of properties throughout Glasgow, and he actually owned the building next door. Essentially, the Panopticon is sort of at the end of one block, and at the opposite block there's a little building on the corner. It's now at the ground floor there's a news agent, but the rest of the building, as far as I'm aware, is it's not used for anything. It's quite crumbly, the building, it has to be said, but that actual building itself was used by that was owned by Picard, and he actually he used it to exhibit things as well. So he used to put on shows and little sort of not like shows on stage, but things like freak shows and zoos and odd things in there.
One of the stories that I heard that one of the things that reportedly haunts the Panopticon is a monkey.
Yeah, I've heard that too. I've not come across any evidence of that, but it's possible.
Yeah, haunted by a monkey.
It's possible.
A bear once escaped from, and they had to shoot it as well. You had a bear, and it got out, and they had to shoot it in the middle of Argyle Street.
That's a shame, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's always very sad when that happens.
Imagine just walking down Argyle Street and there's a bear comes tearing towards you.
Yeah.
You didn't expect to see that.
No. Or maybe you do. I don't know. But yeah. So just to finish off that thought about the building on the corner is so this old fella Harry Hill actually said that building had a reputation for being haunted, because when Picard died, people could still hear him coming up the stairs. Is the stairwell that sort of wound up the building is. Picard, when he was alive, he had the habit of walking up the stairs and basically tapping his walking stick, his cane, on the railings of the balcony, of the railings when he went up the the stairs, and after he died, people in the building could still hear that. They could still hear the tick, 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 tick of him walking up the stairs. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. Glasgow, just a very, very haunted place. Like I said at the start, everybody goes, "Oh, Edinburgh is really old, and it must be really super haunted." And you go to Edinburgh, and there's just all these ghost tours and graveyard tours, and there's just dozens and dozens of companies doing these ghost walks and all that kind of stuff. But Glasgow is probably just as, if not more, haunted than Edinburgh. But the problem is we tear all our buildings down and replace them with modern sort of structures. And obviously if you work in a modern building, you're probably less likely to believe it to be haunted. So you're not probably, if you worked in an old kind of creepy building, you'd probably be like, "Oh, it's haunted." But if you worked in a nice fresh modern building, it probably would never enter your mind of it to be a possibility that could be something that happens. So if Glasgow keeps tearing its old buildings down or burning them down or whatever, it's less likely we're going to keep getting these ghost stories or hauntings for Glasgow.
Yeah, there's an interesting, just to sort of mention an old case, which was actually an old Archie Roy, Professor Roy case he investigated. I thought was quite interesting. Was basically it was a new house, and the family, the little girl, and was complaining about this lady. Basically, it was like a toddler, young child, but could still speak. Was kept complaining about the lady, and they just thought it was nightmares and things like that. And then I think eventually, one of them maybe have seen an apparition themselves. So Archie thought, well, this is interesting. I'll go and investigate this. And he brought along a medium, and medium turned up, not told anything about it, and spotted. Sure enough, this grumpy-looking woman, and basically, allegedly, supposedly, the medium stated that this unquiet spirit was complaining bitterly about all these people that were in her house, and the medium was like, "But how is this your house? Because this is a new house." Where did you live? And got this, said, got this address, this part of Glasgow, and then was like, well, this is not even this neighbourhood. I don't understand it. And then it came out that actually within the new house there was this nice old stone fireplace that was built. They had built a big, nice, fancy fireplace, and they got the stones from a demolished tenement on the other side of Glasgow. And it was from that house. So basically, she moved
attached to the fabric of the building.
She was moved with the bricks basically, and built into that fireplace.
It's fascinating,
isn't it?
Yeah,
interesting.
Yeah, because when we were talking about the Tron Theatre earlier, one of the things that George, the spirit, is reported to be upset about is that he doesn't like the new layout of the building. He remembers it as was, and because of now refurbed it and turned it into a theatre, he doesn't like the new layout, and that it kind of annoys him.
Yeah, there's another property that is commercial, and they wouldn't like it necessarily to be known. I think it's passed into ownership of new people, but I would still respect that client confidentiality. But there is basically a commercial premises that is split up into smaller commercial units. I'm trying to keep this vague. Most Glaswegians will probably guess where this is. Don't shout out loud. Yeah, okay. Right, okay. But you might just call it some sort of boutique arcade, full of small businesses. But basically, what we did is we investigated this place, and based on the witness accounts of actually the builders, who whenever they wanted to sort of rebuild parts of the shop, shop units, merge them, etc., etc. And it was when they did that things kicked off. So whenever you change the fabric of the building, it would stir up things and things would happen. So that was interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
We've run out of time.
Aye. So I hope you enjoyed that. I certainly did.
Yeah.
It's nice
something
to get
different.
It's nice to get out of the high tech studio that we normally.
Yes. And get out into the cold winter sun of Glasgow.
So listeners, please. So I'd like to thank you all for tuning in to our Haunted Glasgow special edition of Weirder Hings podcast. Please join us next Thursday, and obviously we hang about afterwards. You can download and listen at your leisure. We're going to be talking about something definitely weird, but and definitely sort of unnerving.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this.
Are you?
Yes.
And it is Sonny Bean.
The legend of Sonny Bean.
The legend of Sonny Bean.
Nail looking this up. Don't be like who's Sonny and look it up. Wait for the podcast.
Yeah.
And let us.
We'll tell you all about it.
We'll tell you all about it in great gory detail.
Yay!
Yeah. So until next week.
Aye, cheerio!
Cheerio!